Hello and welcome to another episode of Educational. This is Roy.
This is Terry.
So we are the podcast. We are going to bring you, we're chronicling our journey, not only through our aging process, but also through, we're fortunate enough to have our parents living. And so we are always having new challenges that arise with making sure that they are healthy and safe. And also, from time to time, we bring guests on the show, professionals in their area, talk about different disciplines. And today is no different. Terry, I'll let you introduce Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie Silverman is an international speaker, two-time Effie Award winner for marketing excellence, human behavior specialist, conversation expert, president of Consumer Perspective LLC, a consumer research company, and NLP practitioner. She's the creator and co-author of the award-winning Amazon #1 bestseller, It's Just a Conversation: What to Say and How to Say It in Business, and the author of the newly released book, Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation. Having witnessed fraud against my aging aunt of 93, I realized her story and countless other frightful scams, including the grandmother scam, charity scam, IRS scam, sweepstakes scam, to name a few, along with tips to protect one's money and family, need to be told. That's why I wrote Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation. If you think can't if you think it can't happen to your family, think again. Debbie, thank you so much for being on this show. We sure appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish we were all, I wish all the listeners were on video because we could ask them to raise their hand if they even know what rabbit ears are. Unfortunately, my hand has to go up. For those that don't know, used to, we actually had to have those on top of the TV set to get the picture to come in. And if you lived in a rural area like us, maybe one of the children had to stand at the TV and constantly be adjusting those rabbit ears so we could get a program, especially if it was a football Sunday.
and stand there contorting, while you're doing it. Don't move. You got to stay.
I must say that was I'll tell one story before we get too started. That was probably my worst dad moment is back in 2000s, there was a presidential debate that preempted the World Series or something like that. And so we had a dish and I had to go to rabbit ears, and we lived in a kind of in a valley. So I told my daughter, I said, I got like 100 feet of coax. I told my daughter, take these rabbit ears and just walk as far as you can walk. And then still wasn't working. I said, okay, hold them over the top of your head. And so the picture finally got dialed in. I said, could you just stand there for about 3 hours while I watch this baseball game?
I bet she didn't do it.
No,
She's a devoted daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, she called me out on that one pretty quick.
Well, you could have paid her.
Oh, Debbie, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. When we talked earlier, I think we all can agree this is such an important topic to talk about, because I'm telling you, it's not just, our seniors typically fall into the trap a little easier, but I'm telling you, these things are coming at all of us constantly every day. And, I just got one before we came on the air. It was a simple call. I didn't answer it, but it went to voicemail and it said, please text me at this, crazy phone number there. So I can only imagine what kind of trouble I might get into if I was to actually respond to that text. Who knows what it is or what they'd be capturing, but probably not good.
These scammers are getting very creative, very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what prompted you to write the book? I recall you talking.
I want to hold it up so that you can see what I'm talking about. Let's see. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wrote Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation because my aunt, who was 93 years old, she was in and out of the hospital rehab, and it got to a point one day we were in the hospital writing checks for her. And we said, let's call the bank, make sure we have the right amount in the bank and see what's going on. We spoke to the person in the bank about her checking account, and they said, yes, the amount's right. And she approved it. She said, yes, the amount is right. And then I went to the bank to do some more banking for her. She made me POA, power of attorney, on her account. And I went to the bank to do more business for her. And I happened to see a statement that said there was a online transfer from her savings to her checking. And I said, did she call and say, please transfer the money from the savings to the checking? And they said, no, no, no. She made an online transfer. I'm like, really? I said, how is that possible when she doesn't have a cell phone? She doesn't have a computer. She doesn't have an iPad. She doesn't even have a microwave. She's got a TV with rabbit ears, the antenna like you were describing. Well, she did it. She made the online transfer. So this opened up a whole can of worms, like what is going on here? It turns out, after I did some detective work and I got a detective involved, it turns out that there was a tenant that lived above her, and the tenant's boyfriend somehow got my aunt's information and also somehow got some of her checks. And he created an online account, and they were writing between the boyfriend and I believe it was my aunt's aide. She also had an aide in the house because she needed some assistance. We believe that together they were working together, and he got the checks, and checks were written in insane amounts. Like we're talking 5 figures, wow. Insane amounts, like $50,000 to cash. And on the bottom for the memo, it would say something like roof repair or something like that. And she never, ever had that done. And so I said to the bank, I said, wait a minute, what's going on here? There are these checks written to insane amounts to cash or to this name that I didn't recognize. It turned out to be the aide's boyfriend. And I said, what's going on with this? Well, your aunt, I guess, approved those checks. And I'm like, no, she never approved these checks. And this went back and forth. As I said, I got a detective involved. And when we were in the hospital with my aunt, a very close friend of hers who became a close friend of mine, we were talking about it. And I said, look, I don't want to tell her what's going on because I didn't really want to upset her that much that could kill her. I was really worried about that. Right. So we didn't tell her what was happening. And it turns out she passed away like a few weeks later. And I got a detective involved. I filled out all the paperwork and all that stuff. And we're talking about fraud in the amount of about $130,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was just insane amounts. Insane amounts.
You didn't, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you lived in a separate state.
Yeah, I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
She was in New York.
Okay.
She's in Staten Island, New York. Okay. And as I said, I got the detective involved, filled out all the paperwork, showed them all the checks, the accounts, I mean, everything. My aunt owned part of that apartment building that she lived in. The tenant above her had to go past my aunt's apartment to get to theirs, to go upstairs to their apartment. So one day I was in my aunt's apartment cleaning up, and I heard them come in. And before that happened, the detective said to me, do I know an Alex? And I'm like, no, not really. Or no, he asked me, do I know an Alejandro? I said, no, but the name does sound a little bit familiar. And I remember that the tenant's boyfriend was Alex. And I didn't put the two together at first. And then I heard them come in through the front door, passing my aunt's apartment. I opened my aunt's apartment door and said, hi, how are you? I want to introduce myself. I said, my mom is also part owner. She wants to know who's renting from my aunt. So I said, let me take a quick picture so I can send it to my mom. And the boyfriend said, no, you know what? We'll send you a picture. I'm like, I got my cell phone. Let me just take a quick picture. So I was playing Nancy Drew.
Yeah.
And I took the picture, sent it to the detective right away. He wrote back immediately and said, this is very, very, very helpful. What they were able to do was match the picture I sent him to the picture in the bank of the video. And It was him. Oh, and he got arrested. He was in jail probably for all of 10 minutes. He got an attorney involved. Because my aunt had passed away at that point, the attorney was arguing that, well, there's no proof. Nobody can say it was really him. He got off on a misdemeanor. And then the whole thing was just horrendous. And then the bank saying, that she opened up an online account when obviously that wasn't possible.
Right.
And I said to the bank, how can you let something like this happen where so much money is being written out to cash?
Right.
How do you let this happen? And they said, well, she had the wrong account. She didn't have a private banking account. She had the wrong account. I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah, you'd think they would do, and it's been a long time since I've done a lot of business in checks, but you'd think they'd have that mechanism like they do with credit cards, where if there's unusual activity or, writing large checks, a bunch of them, they have like a fraud alert where they will get a hold of you and kind of check in on you. So I'm very surprised that they didn't do that. And
Yes.
the other part of that is I've tried to transfer money before. It's such a hassle. It's really difficult for me to believe that that this guy, was able to go through all of this that easy, that he didn't have to have more involvement from people at the bank to give them a chance to recognize that that wasn't your aunt, that this is somebody else.
See that?
Well,
I
yeah,
talked-
right. And he opened up the account in a separate bank from where my aunt did her banking. And something I'd like to tell your viewers, this is so important. If you have a savings account and a checking account at the same bank, make sure you're always looking at your balances, because a lot of people will focus on their checking account because that's the one they use most often.
Right.
And that's the one where they're taking money out, usually, and savings is savings.
Yes. Yeah.
If you don't look at both and something is going on, I can tell you right now, the banks are not responsible if you don't catch it 30 plus 5 days. If you don't catch it, you don't report it, it's not their problem.
Wow. Did not know that either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the other thing too, if I'm not mistaken, like with the savings account, they generally send those statements out maybe even quarterly. So you may have to request that you get one of those monthly, or figure out how to check that online so you can be vigilant as that for those
Or tie them together so you get the accounts at least once a month if you're still getting paper account information.
Yeah, that's crazy. What did you find out about tell me about the charity scam?
The charity scam has to do with people calling and saying that they're with a charity. And if you get an older person who wants to always help somebody, and they believe that the charity is real, and this could even be a charity scam through a church, and you believe that the church is real, maybe it's even a church you've been to. It could possibly be. I mean, I'm not saying all churches do this, and I'm not saying everybody should be afraid to go to their church or to donate. But the point is, these charity scams happen. People take advantage of these older people, and they know that the older generation they're very giving, and they always want to help, and they always want to be part of everything. So when they get a phone call and they're lonely, remember they're lonely. They get a phone call, please, you helped us last year, and you may not remember if you did or you didn't. Then all of a sudden you're giving again and again and again, and then they take advantage of you. Well, you gave us $1,000 last year. We could really use your help if you gave us $2,500 this year. And then it just builds from there. And there's really you can't stop it, because a lot of these are real and a lot of them aren't real. So you don't know what's real as far as the charity scams go.
Yeah, and I think we also have to make people aware that it's easy. Not that I would ever do this, but I could go out and clone a church website, and I could, for anybody from the outside, I could look like I was that church with the PayPal link or the donation link on that website, and be funneling all those funds. And that's why we just warn everybody to, we don't want anybody to quit giving. We celebrate that giving spirit, but let's just make sure that the people we're trying to give the money to are the ones that actually get that. And
do your research.
Sometimes that's
right. Do your
maybe
research.
hand delivering a check, or either making sure you mail it to the actual address of the building, or the best way if you go is walk in there and hand it to the your priest or preacher or somebody that works there that for a fact really does work there.
That's an excellent idea, is to do it in person. Yes.
Yeah, because there's just so much, and then the internet is great. I love it. I couldn't do without it. But unfortunately, it has given people a huge gray area to operate where we really don't know. And that we kind of talk about this as we are on the subject, is that, be wary of these emails that come out to you that say, hey, I'm from the church. Here's the donation link. Just send it to me. Or, those that are like, we got one the other day, I think Terry did, that said, we're following up with a $578 purchase from Amazon, and they have a link that they want you to go in and put your information. And I cannot stress this enough. If you get an email that you think is legit or something, just always go through the website, pick up the phone and call them. Don't go through those emails, even if you're fairly certain it is the institution that's sending it to you, because you just never know.
And they just changed the logo. They changed the logo just enough to where it's not matching exactly, but it looks exactly like it,
That's right. And I even got one, just talking about those emails. I got one from what looked like from my bank about my account being compromised. And I called the bank instead of opening it up or going to any links or like that. I called the bank and I said, is this real? Is this from you? And they were like, no, it's not. And one of the clues for me to even call the bank in the first place was that there were a lot of hyphens in the name instead of just the name of the bank.
Yeah.
And that's a clue. Like, if it doesn't look like it's real, always check it out first before you ever open up those emails. And I know it's time consuming and all. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run.
Money and heartache. And not just emails. I mean, text messages, phone call, all of that.
Yeah, we seem to have gotten much, like I was saying, I got one prior to the show, but it seemed like in the last week, we have started getting more of fraudulent looking texts that are coming across. So if you don't recognize it, the other thing too, I always recommend to my parents is, and to myself and Terry, if we've got a setting on our phone that if the number's not in our directory, it just goes to voicemail immediately. And, my thing is, if it's a legit call, unless you're waiting on an emergency phone call, let it go to voicemail, see who it is, and then don't call their number back. Call, if it's your bank, call the number that you generally call for that bank, because definitely they're starting to use the phone and text a lot more for these scams.
And to that point, Roy, Social Security will never text you. Social Security will never phone you. They will send a letter by regular U.S. snail mail. They will never call you or text you. So if you get one of those calls or something on your computer, an email or a text, that's all fake.
Right.
Yeah. That and IRS as well.
Yes.
And I think the other part of those is they try to plant that urgency. It's like, and for
compromised.
Yeah. And if you're like someone that relies on that Social Security check every month to live, and somebody says, hey, there's a problem with that, you're not going to get it, that can put sheer panic, because everybody that's ever dealt with that level of government knows that if there was a problem, it may take a month to get it worked out, and they can't afford to be without that money. So it strikes fear in them, but still we just have to say, look, there's better ways to check this out. But that's part of the scam, is trying to create that urgency to make you say, like, hey, just like Terry's $578 TV Amazon charge or whatever, is trying to make her emotional to where she's like, I didn't charge that. I'm picking up the phone, or I'm hitting that button and putting my information in there right this minute. That's where we use, that's where the downfall typically is.
The scammers, their job is to create such panic that all sense of reason goes out the window.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this other one, the grandmother scam, because this has actually happened to my mother. Luckily, my daughter was in the same house with her when this happened, so they could put two and two together. But tell us about the grandmother scam.
This is a horrific scam that happens to a lot of the elderly people, especially elderly women. And what happens is you'll get a phone call, and the grandmother will usually answer the phone, and you'll hear screaming and crying, "Grandma, help me, help me!" And you'll hear a child or a young teenager, whatever it might be, screaming and crying, "Help me, help me!" And the grandmother will say a grandchild's name. "June, is that you? June, are you okay? Are you all right?" And, "No, grandma, I need help, I need help." And then a guy's voice will come on, and it could be anything from was in a terrible accident, in a hospital, was in a crime scene, got mixed up with something bad, it could be drug. I mean, they'll make up any story to get you to believe that there's a real issue here.
Right.
And what happens next is they'll say, "Okay, if you want to get your daughter out or granddaughter out of jail," which I know it's a horrible place. I wouldn't want my granddaughter being there either. And they'll make that case, they'll make it sound like they're really there to help you. And they'll say, if you please don't tell her parents, because that only takes more time and only holds things up. And we want to get your granddaughter out as soon as we can. And so what we need you to do is go to, and they'll tell you a store nearby, or they'll tell you to go to a pharmacy and get gift cards in the total crazy amounts. Like it could be $2,000 worth of gift cards, like $500 each or $50, buy this many gift cards, whatever it is. And we'll call you back and you give us the code on the gift card, and then we can release your granddaughter and make sure she gets home safely. Or we can get her an attorney and make sure she gets out okay. So whatever it is, whatever the story is, they usually ask for a gift card. So that right away, if you hear anything like that, first of all, you shouldn't be picking up the phone in the first place. Let it go to voicemail, like you said before. If they do answer, and the story goes on, and they say, "Okay, we need you to send us a gift card code," that's a scam. That is absolutely 100% a scam. And once you give the code on that gift card, you've lost your money. That's it. If you go and buy the gift cards and you never give the code out, that money's still yours.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And had something really intelligent that I was going to say next, but it's obviously escaped me. So let's look at the what about the sweepstakes scam? How is that one carried out?
Roy, before I get to the sweepstakes one, I want to also add for the grandmother scam.
Okay.
Because grandmas want to help the family, because they want to be the big hero, because they want to be the one that their grandchild will run to say, "Please help me," kind of thing. So they will do what they can. They'll bend over backwards to help their grandchild. If you create a code, for example, if something like this, God forbid, happens, have an agreed upon code, like your dog's first name or something like that, that it's real.
Right.
Other than that, it's a scam. So I just want to let you know that there are ways to protect yourself, that if, God forbid, you're in that situation where you think it's real, just say, "Okay, honey, Snoopy," and make up a name, and then say, "No, Grandma, it's not Snoopy, it's so-and-so," if it's real. If it's real, you'll know. That's all. I just wanted to add that for that.
Yeah.
Awesome idea.
I did
Now, as
remember
far as
what
the sweepstakes,
one thing before we move on, I was going to say the other thing we had is social media. Again, great tool when it's used correctly for good and not evil. But we also have to remember it doesn't take a lot of snooping around these days to figure out who is someone's grandchild on social media. So that way, they may have a name, and they may even reach out through social media and say, "Hey, I'm stuck." Because the scam that they ran on or tried to run on my mom was they actually had my daughter's name. And she called and says, and I can't remember how they get around the calling her, not knowing what they call her, grandma or whatever, but there was some exchange initially. And then she said, "Hey, this is your granddaughter, Sarah." I'll use a different name. So they said, she said, "This is Sarah." Well, my daughter just happened to be sitting across the table eating lunch at my mom's house. And she's like, "Well, that's strange because she's sitting right across the table," and immediately that they hung up.
Right.
But that was such a coincidence because my mother is one of those. She would have done anything to help her kids or grandkids out without thinking twice. They had her name, so it was like, this is Sarah. I need that help, and it anyway. So the point I was trying to make is that even if they use the correct name, it doesn't take a lot of snooping around to put two and two together to figure out, who's related to who and how.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very good point about, especially Facebook and so on, that we put so much information about ourselves out there with pictures and names and so on, that, yeah, it's not that difficult for them to find out all that information.
Yeah. And it made me think about my Facebook setting. I think it still has all this information. I need to go in there and change it. Back in the old days when we could trust it, we put everything about us in there, but now it's probably the less we have, the better.
Yeah. And watch the friend requests. I mean, so many of those friend requests come over, and if you would just click, you don't have to be their friend. You just click over and see what their Facebook site looks like. And they've got like 2 photos, they're just starting out and they don't have any mutual friends of yours either. So it's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Just bypass it. Okay. Sweepstakes. Is that what
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
Sweepstakes one.
Yeah.
The what was it? The one that's popular now, I'm at a loss of the name of it. Publishers Clearinghouse. Publishers Clearinghouse is around this time, and they will never ever call you. They will never ever text you or email you. We know from the commercials they show up at your door and surprise you.
Right.
So if you get a call that you won Publishers Sweepstakes, Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, it's a fraud. And what happens with these sweepstake frauds is they'll tell you you've won a tremendous amount of money, millions of dollars, and in order for you to collect even the first payment, you have to pay the taxes. And then they'll ask you to pay the taxes through a gift card, or whatever it might be, or wire the money. They'll say, you need to pay the taxes first before we can send you the money. And people unfortunately fall for this because there's one woman, one story in my book about this woman, her whole life, she knew she was going to win the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, her whole life. And she always told her children, I'm going to win that one day. I'm going to win that one day. And sure enough, she got the call that she won. And she didn't tell her children or her grandchildren because she wanted to surprise them with the gift money, And meanwhile, she's paying out all this tax money, and there was no prize. There was no prize.
I think my dad thought that as well. I mean, he entered it all the time, but via mail, and then he started getting phone calls about it. So, $20 here, 20, I don't know. We don't even know how much he ended up spending.
It all adds up very quickly.
A variation of that scam, probably to talk about now that, there are people desperate for employment, is there, and I don't remember exactly how it goes, but basically, they want you to, they send you a check for $2,500, $5,000, but you have to pay something out of that. And the way that it gets you is you write the check for your amount and send it off to them. And the check that you get from them after about 2 or 3 days, you figure out that it's worthless. So you've already sent your check, it's too late, and then there's no money coming in from them.
That's right.
There's all kinds of variations of that go around. So just, it's the urgency. It's being in a terrible position and feeling like we have to act immediately, but just do a little checking on these companies. Call the Better Business Bureau, try to get a phone number or a physical address. Just be careful. If people ask you for money when you go to work, generally they pay you. You should not have to pay them in order to get a paycheck. So just be careful with those.
Yeah, there's so many. You're right. There's so many of them.
Yeah. And then again, I hate to use my mom, but she's gotten that one too. It was something about mystery shopping, and they sent her like a huge check, and she didn't put it in the bank because she felt like it wasn't, something wasn't right about this. but they kept calling her saying, hey, look, you've got our check. You need to put that in the bank. They just kept hounding her to put this check in the bank. Well, then she got scared. She's like, I'm holding this check from these people and I haven't put it in the bank. Am I going to get in trouble? And I was like, no, just throw it in the trash and quit answering their phone calls and, you'll be okay. But again, it was just that, trying to push her just a little bit into the panic or the urgency that you're going to get in trouble. And she sure didn't want that to happen.
Yeah. They use fear a lot and it works.
Yes, exactly. So what do you have any other good tips or tricks that we want to keep in mind as we try to protect ourselves and our family against scams?
Don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
Let it go to voicemail. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it's true.
Right.
No, and we're so conditioned to answer it, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we got to answer it. We got to answer it.
Yeah. And especially an older person who's lonely
Yes.
and wants to talk to a real person or you think is a real person.
Right.
So don't answer the phone. Let it go to voicemail. If you answer the phone and they ask you anything or they tell you, they scare you anyway, and they're asking for a gift card, hang up, forget about it. Say, call the police or call somebody. Unfortunately, when you call the police, there's not much they can do about it. Even if you go through the scam and you are actually scammed a lot of money, there's not a lot they can do. So just be vigilant, be aware, just be common sense if you can have it during the time when you're very fearful and very emotional. It's not easy to have common sense. However, if you listen to these tips and look at my book, which is Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation, with a lot of good stories. There's a jewelry scam in there about a woman who went to a friend. It was a friend that had a friend as a jeweler and asked her to, get my ring appraised. I just want it appraised. I need to get some more money for a medical issue she had. She had to have a procedure done. Her friend brought the ring in. The jeweler took the ring and sold it. Now, this ring was worth about $75,000 when she had it appraised a number of years ago.
Wow.
The jeweler gave her friend $1,000 and said, here, give this to her. And when she got the $1,000, she said, I don't want you to sell it. I want you just to get it appraised. She said, well, the jeweler said, it's not really worth that much. So he wanted to give you $1,000 for it. And that's that. And now it's an issue. It's a crime. She's got the police involved. She's got all this stuff going on with the jeweler. But I mean, even friends you think you can trust, you really have to double check everything. And unfortunately, it's time consuming. It's not easy. But you really have to look a little bit harder than just be very trusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to mention that too. I wrote down a note about caregivers is, we are inviting people into our vulnerable parents or vulnerable loved ones' home that we also have to go the extra mile to do background checks. I know that they may seem awesome and they say all the right things, but do the regular background checks, get an outside agency that can help you with that. Also, I always advise to check with the state and federal registries just to make sure that they don't have any previous abuse cases that are pending against them. But, and then also, keeping up with statements. I think it's a good idea, for somebody to kind of look through the statements and just make sure that everything is on the up and up. I guess there's an old saying in the business, trust but verify. So, we want to trust the people we bring in, but we also need to keep a close eye and make sure that nothing strange is going on. And
Roy, to that point, I want to add something on that. This is very important. If my aunt had surveillance cameras throughout her apartment, in her bedroom, and I know a lot of places are private, you don't want a surveillance camera, but if you had a camera in there, or if she had a camera in there, and I was able to at least observe what was going on, we would know for sure how her checks were stolen. We would know for sure that this guy came in, or whoever it was, the aide came in and did this. So I would suggest even those Ring, the doorbells that have the video on the front, that could be a very big help to the police if you have an issue, if you have a case.
Yeah. And if you get with professionals, you can find a way to set them up where the individual can still maintain their privacy to some respect, but you can see people that are coming in, you can see dressers, and you can see the important areas that somebody would need to get to in order to perpetrate one of these scams.
And make
Yes.
sure that you research the security people too.
Yes, yes. Yeah. One more thing that brought up was the, it sounds corny, but if you're ever in doubt, just phone a friend, somebody that is maybe not in that hyper emotional state that you were in at that moment. They may be able to help you with, hey, you know what, I've seen this, or let's take this route to make sure that that is legitimate. So never hurts to reach out as well and just talk to your family, maybe your child, or if you have a good friend, just reach out to somebody and get some, extra set of eyes to look at that.
Yes.
And there are, AARP has an elder watch program as well, where you can report frauds and scams. I think it's 833-372-8311. So 833 fraud 11. I know, that's one of them. And then your friend Debbie, who we spoke with a week ago, she had some good organizations that deal with fraud as well, support groups and all of that, just to know where you can go.
I list a bunch of them in my book as well, Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation.
Yes.
I do list a bunch of sources and resources that they can contact if they think they're being scammed, or if they want to learn about ways not to be scammed.
Right.
That's all in the book.
Awesome.
Yeah, just one more before we go. I was going to say that happened, came up on Nextdoor in our area. They had a guy going up to we live in an area where there's a lot of older homeowners. And so the guy was going up to the door and saying, hey, I've got the city contract to repave these roads in this neighborhood. And we usually have leftover asphalt product when we get through. So what we do is we sell that, at half price to the neighbors to repave their driveway or whatever. But what we do, we've only got 10 slots. And so we have to collect the money up front. And so anyway, what this person was very heads up, what they did is they got the information off the side of his truck, called the city, and the city said, no, we don't even have a contractor like that working for us. So, we talk a lot about online, but sometimes they will walk right up to your front door and try to do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Debbie. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So what we always ask our guests, so what is a tool that you use, or what is a habit that you have that you think really adds value to your life, either professionally or personally?
Well, gratitude is a big part of my life. And talking to my dog when I walk him is a big part of my life.
Can talk that much.
Because it kind of calms me down. I can talk to him, and he listens for the most part. Sometimes he has to have the last word, but pretty much we both talk to each other. And just the gratitude is a big part of my life. And also focus. Focus is a big part of my life. Being in the moment. Yes. Very often I find most of us, and I say most because I've been guilty of this as well, that we're not in the moment, we're thinking ahead, so we're not always seeing what's right in front of us. So especially now with all these scams and fraud and everything else, if you're in the moment, you can react better than just going off all crazy and emotional.
Okay. All right. Those are two great ones. So if you would, tell us one more time, tell us how we can get the book, where we can get the book, how somebody could reach out to you and get in touch with you.
Okay. I'm going to show the book one more time.
Okay.
If you can see it. Protecting the Rabbit Ears Generation, with the TV. You see the TV antenna and the old phone.
Yep.
And they can reach out. They can go to Amazon if they want to order at Amazon or through Kindle. Or if you'd like to get a signed copy, which I'd be happy to do, it's just email me at rabbitears@gmail.com. That's rabbit, RABBIT, ears, EARS, rabbitearsbook, BOOK, @gmail.com.
Okay. Yeah, we'll be sure to include that in the
I
show
will.
notes as well. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This information has been very helpful. Audience, please just be aware of all these things, and let's really think this stuff through before we get tangled up. And because it could take a long time if you can ever unwind this once it happens, it can take a lot of time and cost you a lot of money. So let's just try to avoid it altogether.
Awareness is key.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure, for sure. All right, Debbie. Well, thanks a lot. That's going to do it for us. You can find us, of course, at ageeducational.com. We're on all the major social media platforms. We are also on all the major podcast platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. If we're not on one that you use all the time, please reach out. We'd be glad to get it added. So appreciate you listening. If you have any good story ideas, if you're a professional in the space, if you have a story of a loved one, we'd be glad to hear from you. Either Roy at ageeducational.com or Terry with a Y at ageeducational.com. Be glad to talk to you about it. So until next time, that's going to do it for me.
Debbie, thank you so much. It's been great. Invaluable information.
Thank you again for having me on this wonderful platform. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Y'all take care of yourself, and please take care of your family members.
Bye-bye.